All right, welcome back to Blue by 90. I'm Justin, joined by Tanner today, and it is Little Brown Jug week. I should know this. Is the Brown Jug like one of the longest standing
Oh yeah,
trophies out there?
yeah. The story behind it's the best too. I'm sure we all know it, but I love talking about it every time
They
this game
just
comes
stole
around.
they literally just stole their water jug, right?
Yeah, they stole Michigan's water jug. Michigan brought a water jug. They didn't trust the Minnesotans. Is that their name?
Minnesotans.
Is that their version of Michiganders? I don't know, but they Michigan did not trust them, and then Minnesota took it and was like, "Hey, well, you beat us, we'll give it back," and thus started one of the longest running trophy games, which also is just a much better story than the governor just being like, "Hey, play for this."
Right,
like,
exactly.
Paul is awesome, but like, come on.
Yeah, it's like it's very petty of both programs dating back to the early 1900s.
Also. That's why college football is the best, man. There's so many like funny stories like that that go back 100 plus years,
and it's like the stupidest thing ever, right? But it turns into something. I actually got to hold and see the real Jug at the Champion Circle Trophy Walk back at the spring game.
I didn't get to hold it, but I saw all the Michigan had all the trophies at that point. Like literally
held every one.
They might have had the jeweled shillelagh too. I don't know. I mean, we had all of them, man.
It was, but it's a very cool trophy. It's funny because it quite literally is just a jug. That is it.
I love that. Like back in the 1900s, like that was how you carried water. Yeah. Like, you can't just go get like a massive Yeti at Dick's Sporting Goods. Like you had to like literally. That was probably somebody made that from clay. It's like, hey, we need to be able to transport our water. It's also like it's kind of big, but like how many cups did you get?
That's what I'm saying. Like they definitely had to like ration the water for sure.
Maybe they had multiple, and that was just the one that got stolen. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah, that could be. That could be. Yeah, it is pretty funny. But Minnesota travels to Michigan, the 5th out of 5 home games. So we will be there again with our Hail IPA, our Truly Seltzer and Sun Cruiser, hard vodka tea. So we'll be tailgating out there. Come find us. Come see us at Pretzel Bell on Friday night as well. We'll be hosting some Michigan football trivia and doing a little live podcast there. But yeah, I mean, I would say this is like, we've had our ups and downs, obviously, with the season so far. Fresno State, you have the home opener. Then you have Texas, which was a gigantic game. You lose that one. Come back. Arkansas State, definitely like a downer game. And then back up to USC, which was a crazy game as well. And now you're at Minnesota, who's not nearly as good as they have. What are our thoughts on PJ Fleck?
He gives us props, so I think he wants the Michigan jobs just more than anything, and he's not going to get it unless he kind of completely shifts his identity as a coach beyond just being a rah-rah guy, right? Yeah. Like you never watch. I mean, the 2019 team with Tanner Morgan, Rashad Bateman, that beat Penn State, that was a really good squad.
They had like one good win though. Let's be real. They had one sick win. It was like an awesome win at home, right? And they like rushed the field, and it's like, but that is quite literally the highlight of PJ Fleck's career. And he almost did get like not the Michigan job, but just like a big job off of that one win.
Yeah, but I mean, I like PJ Fleck.
I don't dislike him. I definitely agree with you that like, I'm not gonna. Fraud is not really the right answer because nobody's really saying like he's not James Franklin fraud-esque, right? But It's just like, all right, you need to like
7-5 and maybe have a 5-7 year sprinkled in, and maybe an 8 or 9 win season. And if 2019 had the 12-team playoff, they're probably in it. I don't know what the rankings ended up being, but they won 10 games, I believe. Yeah. So I think PJ. I mean, he had a great tenure at Western Michigan, and Minnesota's not necessarily a super easy place to win. They've had stretches of success, but the last 2 decades, they just haven't really been that great. So I feel like he's done a good job there. I do wonder if he could be that CEO kind of coach where he hires elite coordinators at a big program. I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if he identifies coaching talent that well either. But again, it's Minnesota. They've been a solid program, and they haven't had a great year so far.
Yeah, they're 500, right? Lost to North Carolina, who then got absolutely boat raced by James Madison.
I mean, did they have 50 at half?
50 burger in the first half at home. Sorry, on the road against North Carolina, like in Chapel Hill. That was absurd. So that doesn't bode well for Minnesota to say, all right, when you saw that, you're like, okay, they lost to UNC. UNC has been a pretty good program under Mac Brown. You have Drake May, and then you see what James Madison, who is a really good program. Let's not get that part wrong. But you see what they did to UNC, and it's like, okay, that's a bad loss then. 17-19. They beat Rhode Island 48-0, beat Nevada 27-0, and then lose to Iowa 14-31. So, I mean, letting up 31 points to Iowa should be like, that should get you kicked out of the conference. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, only putting up 17 against a really bad North Carolina defense is pretty shameful. And then, getting, I mean, it was close in the first half. I believe it might have been tied, and then Iowa put it on in the second half. My uncle, shout out to my uncle, gave me this stat that if you combine Cade McNamara and Alex Orji's passing stats, we're not hitting 100 yards. So...
Is that real? Is that real?
Yeah, because McNamara had 61 yards and Orji had 32.
Holy shit. That is unbelievable.
Also, not as many yards as Michigan State had in 2018 against Michigan. Just, they had 95 total yards, and those guys combined for 93. So, not great. But
not great.
This is a game that you're coming off of a big win, probably an emotional win, right? Because that feels like a bit of a season-saving win, right? It changes the trajectory. It changes the vibes. And so instead of sitting there at 2-2 and you're like, oh my gosh, we're up 14-0, give up a big lead and end up losing at home, you find a way to pull it out. And so it completely changes that perception and that vibe in Shem right now. And so, this is a game where they've got to get back on the saddle and make sure that they do come out and play their game. When it comes to Minnesota, the biggest concern for me is Darius Taylor. He's a kid that Michigan should have recruited a lot sooner. Offered him late. Kid out of Detroit, was a fantastic player last year as a freshman. He's averaging 6.3 yards per carry this year. So I'm not sure, though, if that's going to matter too much when you have.
I have a really, really hard time figuring out how Minnesota is going to score a single point in this game.
Absolutely.
That's my honest opinion, is like with the swagger that Michigan's defense played with last week versus Lincoln Riley and, Miller Moss is really good. A team that put up crazy points against LSU and was looking like they can throw the ball everywhere. And Michigan just made their offensive line look like, dog shit. And so with them only putting up 17 against North Carolina, putting up 14 against Iowa, I have a really hard time figuring out how they're going to score points.
Yeah, I mean, their quarterback, Max Brosmer, is a transfer from New Hampshire, was a really good player at the FCS level. He's honestly not been terrible. I mean, he's completing 66% of his passes, throwing for 836 yards. But his best game came against Rhode Island. And then he only threw for 59% against Iowa with 2 picks and 2 touchdowns at a 5.6 per clip. So that's obviously, look, I mean, we know what our yards per attempt is right now. It's not great, but when you can lean on the run game, right? When you can lead, we get it, Minnesota. But when you can lean on the run game in the way that Michigan can, and to your point, Minnesota is going to have to face a defense that's got, at least 2 of the best 3 defensive tackles in the Big Ten. I mean, Barry Alexander, a guy. I mean, you look at his recruiting rankings.
Technically, he's not in the Big Ten anymore because he's in the portal.
Well, so, he's still enrolled at USC. So I mean, I guess
that was the most people just have to stay off social media. I know we're online. We're very online.
I'm so online.
Way too online. We are online ourselves, but If you haven't seen it, go to our Twitter and look at the tweet that says a 3-part story. And Bear Alexander, who is a kid who started at Georgia, I think he committed and decommitted multiple times from different.
He also
schools.
played at 3 or 4 different high schools.
Played at 3 or 4 different high schools, and then played. So he's a D tackle for USC. Had a decent game at times for sure, but then also got displaced on the biggest play of the game.
Bodied him.
Who Evan Link hasn't really bodied anybody outside of that this year, let's be honest. And then his dad is on Twitter after the game going he's talking shit. He saying that he is better than Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, and pointed to the recruiting rankings, which have nothing to do with once you're playing ball at the college level, nobody gives a shit what
those guys signed almost 3 years ago.
Yes.
So very interesting time in college football too, with the red shirts and opting out in the middle of the season.
And then it was
crazy.
Well, and then to your point, so then it's 24 hours after he's tweeting all this, all of a sudden Bear Alexander red shirts and enters the portal and is opting out of the season.
Are we going to see this more? Do you think?
Well, the funny thing is that we'll talk about the UNLV QB in a second, but the funny thing about Bear Alexander was it sounds like that's not even about NIL money. It's just about
transfer.
He's just trying to save his season so that he has more eligibility. Well, if you're as good as your dad says, then you should be going.
You shouldn't need a 5th year. You should need a 4th year, right? Mason Graham and KG are gone this year. Right. I hate to break it to you, they're going to be first rounders, and the state of college football right now is insane. I know we're a Michigan centric podcast, but I really kind of want to talk about this because it's kind of absurd that I don't know if you remember this, Justin, but we saw this, and not necessarily to go into the portal or not because of NIL issues, but Houston under Dana Holgorsen, who is no longer there, they had a really rough start to a year. And so with the 4-game redshirt rule being implemented in the past few years, they made the decision collectively to have some of their key players opt out for the rest of the year and come back the next year.
Crazy.
That may be even crazier than what we're seeing right now, because look, if I don't know any of that stuff with UNLV. I didn't even know. I mean, I know they're in Las Vegas, but I didn't know what kind of NIL game they're playing. But hey, look, the things that I've seen, and I don't know if it's true, but if I got promised $100,000 for my job and I only got $3,000, I'd be pissed.
I'm not working tomorrow.
Absolutely
I can promise you I'm not showing. So I definitely agree with that part of the people that are oh, he's a quitter, blah, blah, blah. You have to understand, this is coming from a guy who's been entrenched in NIL for the last 3 years, is these guys, this is a business at this point, right? You do a business deal when you transfer, for obviously this guy's agent did not sign a contract, which to me is very dumb of the agent. That is on the agent to say, if they're just going off verbal, that's on him. But they made they had an agreement, right? To say, all right, we will enroll here, but we are going to be promised $100,000. When that's not held up, to me, that is on the school / the collective. That's not on the kid. And so part of me is you wish that you just want a guy that wants to play football, right? For sure. But that kid is bringing immense value to UNLV. They're deserves.
They're in the playoff conversation. How much money is that worth, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, college football's in a weird place right now, man. I saw somebody say we just saw a deal breaker take place in the middle of the season, referencing the new college video game. But yeah, I don't know, man. And there's been a lot of to bring it back to Michigan, there's been a lot of fans who've been kind of disappointed. And you know this, and I know this, and a lot of folks know this. Michigan is doing what it needs to do, right? And there's been I feel like it's gotten a lot better. But these are the things you can't have happen, right? So Michigan's way of kind of going about it, I think, is really smart and not just throwing numbers around. And I mean, how many times have we seen rumors and, anonymous sources talk about, oh, this 5-star went to this school and only got 20% of what he was guaranteed, right? And so you don't hear that coming out of Michigan. They're going to be straightforward and honest and truthful about what you're going to be able to get. But then also you're going to be able to get more types of endorsement deals, which, Dave Portnoy talked about, going to get a quarterback. Now, look, hey, Dave, might need a quarterback next year, maybe in 26, but Brady Hart's coming. Brady Hart is that guy.
I agree with you. I just think that there are so many student athletes right now that are they deserve. They're bringing tons of value. How much money did the national championship bring in for Michigan this past year? Right. So JJ McCarthy and Blake Corum, like, they deserve that money. But I also totally understand that. I also totally understand that it's it is not the college football we've known and loved. Like, it's not like play for the love of the game anymore. Right. And it is, I'll say this, that is what was so great about that is so great. What the 2023 Michigan team was, right? Was because, it wasn't about NIL for them. Yes, they got money for sure, right? They were compensated for it, but for the most part, they were playing for each other as a brotherhood. So you don't see that obviously with the UNLV kid. You've seen some
and the running back too.
The running back,
not an NIL decision, he says.
That's what he says.
Yeah.
But then you also, I've seen some tweets from UNLV players for the next guy, this next QB up, and they're all in very big support of him too. So it's
yeah,
I don't know. I think to your point, this is where Michigan has been very, very different in the NIL era. And yes, does it mean that you miss out on some 5 stars? But are you building a program instead? And you're building a culture. I think that's still very important. And, you obviously have to have talent to win, but you have to have a culture and a program to win as well. And so I think it's, you've got to find that balance, and those teams that do are going to be successful. It seems like Texas, honestly, is doing that right now, where they have a foundation. I'm sure that Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning are getting paid plenty, but they still have a pretty good culture, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a program that they've got a lot of money, right? Just Texas in general has a lot of money. You think about the different economies down there when it comes to oil and gas and those sorts of things in that state, and financial services, and Texas is just massive, right? I don't know where it ranks as far as the state of California, where if it was his own country and its GDP, but I have to think it'd be up there. So they have a built-in advantage, right? There's a lot of schools that just have that built-in advantage, and let's be honest, there's a lot of schools that kind of have that. They've been doing it for a while. They know how to flow the money, right? And it became legal. It's we could just do it even more and not get in trouble, right? So there's a lot of schools that have that kind of that built-in process where they already know how to do something. There's a lot of schools that maybe, look, there's probably handshake things going on, for the last 100 plus years, right? I mean, college football, we've talked about it so many times, college football is just an inherently dirty sport, right? Yeah. You don't play by the rules in this game. So
that part too, sorry to interrupt you, but that part I think kind of drives me nuts and makes me laugh at all at the same time, where all these people on Twitter that are oh, the NIL has ruined this sport. This is, and it's as if Alabama hasn't been paying players for, literally 40 years, right?
In Hellcats, exclusively.
And and I'm saying Alabama because that's kind of we all know it, but the reality is it's most of the country, right? And so it's, to your point, it's once the ruling became legal, it just made all this come to light. All this could be in the public eye rather than it have to be in a back room.
Did you see, since we're just talking about this, did you see the clip that Dan Murphy from ESPN posted of his interview with Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA?
I did not.
So he was asking him about, it was actually this summer, and he's like, this seems relevant. It's very topical now. with the news about the UNLV players. But Dan Murphy's question basically was, should there be something, a rule change to put this stuff in writing, right? Because a lot of this stuff is, the money is probably above board, but a lot of this stuff is under the table as far as the deals. But the money has to be, because otherwise then you're talking about tax fraud, right? So you can't continue, back in the day, I'm sure there's still some of that going on, but a lot of this stuff you have to report it, 1099s get generated for income. And so you have the IRS down your throat too. But Charlie Baker was like, I think student athletes should find a school and pick a program and then work out the NIL deals later. And Dan Murphy's like, the reality is that's not what's happening.
No.
Because these kids are making decisions based on the monetary value from the schools that they're being offered. And so that's why we're in this spot in the first place. Doesn't matter who the head of that snake is. They're going to continue to turn a blind eye, whether it's Miles Brand or Charlie Baker or whoever the hell else has been the president of the NCAA. They're going to continue to turn a blind eye and just say, oh, well, we didn't
it's
know.
Not our problem.
We couldn't control it.
Yeah.
And it's such a joke because at this point, people already think that it's professional sports, right? So you basically need to turn to a salary cap. And we've talked about this, and I've said it. This is my thought, that there's going to be a number of schools that split off and do their own thing. And then you're going to have the leftovers and maybe some of the G5 schools and maybe some of the lesser Power 5 teams or Power 4. They're going to play for a division, what FCS type of championship, right? And you're going to have the big boys, and it's going to be the NFL format, and there's going to be 32 teams. Like, I don't know if it's exactly going to be like that, but that's what's going to happen. And those teams are going to have salary caps, and they're going to treat it like the NFL, because otherwise this isn't sustainable.
And you know what I hope, and I think a lot of people are with me on this, is like, if that's going to be Charlie Baker's answer, then I hope the NCAA goes down because of that. Right?
They will in the next, by the end of the decade, they will be gone.
If he wants to, if he wants to turn the blind eye and say it's not our problem, blah, blah, blah. And for him to say that is the biggest cop out ever, because he knows exactly what's going on. And
100%.
He's simply trying to play like he's the innocent guy that doesn't. And
he's a politician, and he wasn't prepared for the answer. And that's what happens in those conversations.
It's ridiculous. So yeah. I'm sick of it. But
that was a fun derailment of talking about Michigan, Minnesota.
That's okay.
But I think it's topical, man. It's very relevant right now. And like I said, last thing I'll say, and you know this better than anybody, I think the way Michigan has handled its approach towards NIL has Michigan lost out on some guys because they weren't willing to get into a bidding war? Absolutely. They won a national championship. And I think that the way that they've done it, and yeah, your top guys are going to get theirs, but just making sure that you're not bringing in kind of those locker room issues and these guys sitting out. I mean, could you imagine Kenneth Grant just being like, oh, I'm done? Absolutely not, because that's not the type of kid he is. And I'm not going to crap on anybody that's made that decision, but you build up a culture, you can wreck it real quick, right? You could destroy 100%. It very, very quickly.
That's why, again, I've gone on rants about this on this podcast and stuff, and to you in private as well. But the people that are like, oh, Michigan stinks at NIL. Oh, they're finally figuring out NIL, or those things.
They had number one class in March last year. I mean, I know they didn't finish number one, but come on. They're getting guys.
They're getting guys, and also, but to your point, they've won a national title. What do you want? What more did you need there? But all right, let's
one, because we're not content.
Never.
By the way, I find myself when I'm talking. So maybe they do have a point. I find myself talking to people when they're asking me about the season so far. And I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good still, and maybe I'm resting on my laurels. But in game though, USC game, I'm like, I'm the same. Hey, you watch the Texas game with me, I'm into it.
Is Nebraska complacent with losing to Illinois? I mean,
they've lost 4 out of 5 to the Illini.
Is Illinois dominating Nebraska?
People are talking. By the way, the script Illini, just unbelievably good. You need get away. You look like Syracuse. Get away from that.
Yeah.
Get away from the block eye. What are we doing here? The Illinois that Illinois logo is very underrated to me, and always just reminds me of the 2000s when I first started watching college football. Go to that permanently. Yeah. Bring it back. And I know you can't bring back the Chief Illini logo, which is also just a sick logo. Probably can't bring it back, but that script Illini, that should be. And if you want to do different colors, that's cool too. You want to do blue with orange or white with blue or whatever. You want to switch it up, that's cool too. But that logo should be permanent.
I agree. Also, is Nebraska complacent with like not winning a one-score game ever, or not scoring in overtime?
People are wondering.
I mean, it's just it's a question I think it needs to be asked.
Can I just say though, Raiola is QB1 in 27. That kid's ridiculous.
He is really good.
He's very advanced for his age. I watched, it was Northern Iowa, but I don't care because he looked off the safety for like 2 seconds and then just sidearm slings it for a touchdown on a post route. And it's like, he's a little Mahomie. He is a little bit there, a little weird on the cosplay stuff, but like the game is
there.
It's kind of that.
All right, let's talk about Michigan.
Yes.
So I think the biggest thing, we already talked about Michigan's defense and what, I truly believe that Michigan's defense is going to absolutely dominate this game. I have a hard time with seeing how Minnesota is going to move the ball at all outside of maybe a couple trick plays or something like that. Or, if you have a blown coverage like you did against USC, I could see that. But it just from down to down, I have a hard time. On the other side of the ball, what do you want to see out of Michigan's offense?
Completed passes down the field beyond the line of scrimmage. I want to see a little more creativity, and
it really is as simple as that, though, is it not?
Right, it is. I think this is definitely a game where you can just lean on your talent and win the game, right? And so that's totally fine if they're going to save some stuff. But I need, in the run game, I mean. But in the pass game, I need to see something.
I was just going to say that's exactly what I don't want, though. I don't want Michigan to just say, all right, we're bigger, faster, stronger. We can win this game 24-3 or 24-7, and run it for 250 yards and chew clock and get out of there with the W. That is exactly the opposite of what I want to see. I want to see, all right, put Alex Orji in there, drop him back, run some mesh, get Colston Loveland if he's healthy, get him out there, get Samaj Morgan in space, get Tyler Morris in space, and say, all right, we're going to need to pass the ball to win games down the road. So let's try it now. Let's start getting in the rhythm right now to make sure that we can do this in the future.
No, I'm 100% with you. Definitely need to throw some stuff on tape too when it comes to the passing game. And we talked about this a little bit too, but you can take shots even if they're not completed. You can take shots and just make sure that defense doesn't just keep creeping up and cheat up in the box, and make it more difficult on your run game. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's kind of tough to tell still. I mean, I know, we've seen one game of Orji, but he threw it 12 times. And how many? I mean, it's so funny because all the USC fans that were complaining. Our boy Nico was very heavily involved in that. By the way, I was disappointed.
Goodness, Nico.
There was a throw to Morris that was just a little bit out of his reach. But in that complaining about officiating and Michigan fans being like, well, hold on a second, we could point out a bunch of stuff too. He was, Morris was
held a lot.
Right. And it's like, that might actually be a nice throw. And then the one to Klein is just a little bit out of reach. Maybe needs to be a little more accurate, but like this stuff comes with game reps, right? So you have this Minnesota game where, look, it's not Arkansas State, it's not Fresno State, but you're much more talented than them. So I think, hey, look, if we got to use Kalel Mullings in the first quarter, first half to just get out to a 3-score lead, because he's just Superman and just running over everybody, then we need to really look at getting Alex Orji into some sort of rhythm. We need to work on pass pro as well, right? You only throw it 12 times. You maybe drop back 15 times as Orji scrambles however many times against USC. And it's like your offensive line are also not getting any game reps in pass pro, which they need. And I wonder how much that plays into it, as well as Orji's ability to be able to make some throws, because, I mean, you could go watch it at Shem and they're flying around, but when you get into a game, it's completely different and you're going full speed.
We said the same exact thing about Davis Warren in week 1, right? Where he throws the pick to Fred Moore on that deep ball, and guess what? That's probably completed in practice because they're not going all full, they go full speed, but like you said, practice speed is just different than game speed. And Fred Moore and all those guys are just going just a tick faster, and you got to throw it just a little bit farther. And so I totally agree with you that I don't know that Alex Orji doesn't have it completely, but we need to go get him reps to see exactly where he needs to throw the ball in a game. And when you're he's seen the Michigan defense, which is really good, right? So he sees them in practice every day. But until you start seeing a team with other colors on the other side of the ball, it's just very different. And so that's exactly what I want to see from Orji is, all right, let's get him back there. To your point, we need to get this pass route going. We need to give him time to survey the field. Dude, even on the Tyler Morris throw, even on the Marlon Klein throw, like, I don't think he has tons of time to sit back there and throw it. And so it's a one read throw, right? Yeah. Whereas, like, you watched, I mean, Davis Warren, in my opinion, made a lot of progress over even just the 3 games, made some dumb decisions, but made some progress in going to a second read. Like, that all comes with time. You have to get comfortability back in the pocket and say, all right, the game slows down the more you play it, right? There's a reason why Pat Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, they played so many games throughout their career, Tom Brady, and all they're even with guys just coming at them from the edges, their eyes downfield the whole time, and they can process things a lot quicker because of all those reps. And so that's what I want to see out of Orji this week is just like, all right, process what you're seeing on the field, survey it, look at your first and second read. If you have to check down, let's check down. That's okay, right? Like you see it in the NFL all the time where a check down goes for 8 yards. We can do that, right? Like, and I think too, you want to know the other thing that I want to see, to your point, I want to see these receivers get open. Like, let's create some separation because outside of Tyler Morris on that play where he's definitely getting held, and, Marlon's decently open. Samaj was open on the one that we've all seen. Like, there wasn't much separation. So we need to see that too, right?
Well, 100% do. And I'm wondering if Andrew Marsh can suit up for the rest of the season. I don't know how that works if he can graduate early. But, no, I mean, I definitely need to see more out of the receivers, right? And, Tyler was banged up. He didn't play against Arkansas State. I don't have the snap counts up in front of me. I think he played more on Saturday. But, you want to see these guys get open and make it easier on their quarterback, and to what Jake Butt said earlier in August when we had him on the show talking about, and I've never really even thought about this, but it's so simple. It makes so much sense that, hey, your tight end, when they're in line, they're the closest receiver to you. They're the closest eligible guy you could throw the football to. And so, that's why that drag route to Marlon, like I want to see more of those types of throws because it's easy. It's a 6-yard throw in the air to Marlon Klein on a drag route. And obviously, if Colson Loveland's healthy, let's make sure he's good and not get him hurt because you can win the next 2 games without him. Right. If he's healthy, then, let's, I still want to see him lined up at different spots. But, if he's in line, like, let him. Too. Absolutely. I've talked about this a bunch. I know you've talked about it. Like, there needs to be more motion with Donovan. There needs to be more motion with Samaj. There should be motion on every single play. Like when you watch the Lions and Rams game in week 1, there was a stat at some point that both teams were over 85% of motion per snap or for all snaps in the game at that point in like the fourth quarter. Right. And those are 2 of the better offenses in the NFL. And in the NFL, you see so much motion, right? Because it messes with the defense. And Michigan, it feels like they don't really know how to take advantage of that, which is crazy because Roman Wilson made a shit ton of money doing that last year.
Yes, we did it. I mean, I feel like we've said this 100 times now, but in the Rose Bowl, it was like the perfect example of that, right? And I'm like, I feel like, we have to get back to that, especially just if you look at just Donovan alone, like he should be in motion every single time, whether he starts out and comes back in or starts in and goes out. Like, make sure you read the defense if they're in man versus zone, and B, you can take a linebacker either in or out of a play, right? And so I really want to see more of that as well. I think to your point, like just more creativity. At some point you're not going to be able to run inside zone, and Khalil Mullings is going. He told me that he was pretty damn sore after Saturday. He said
he had 17 carries,
which is very funny. Bredesen told me it was the most sore he's ever been ever. So
shout out to USC guys how they feel though. It's like you should see the other guy.
You should see the other guy.
So, one of them transferred already.
What?
One of them said, I'm out, bro.
Hey, he went up against Bredesen and Mullings one time. It's like, I'm good. The Big Ten is not for me. It's not for me.
I mean, Evan Lake kicked his ass, was like, I'm out of here, brother.
So, I mean, the other thing that I just want to see is just like, I keep going back to it. Like, I was actually talking to Jake Button Kalal and said this. I said, listen, Coach Harbaugh, it's corny, it's all that, but better today than you were yesterday, better tomorrow than you were today. I want to see Michigan continue to build. This is like the last thing that Michigan can do this week is come out and lay an egg. Even if you win the game, again, 21-7, you cannot do that, right? For your momentum, for your mental, all that, you need to go out and play with enthusiasm, play with energy, play with, that swagger. Like, that is one thing that I think Michigan needs to do is continue building on what they did on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm with you. Got to continue to work on the pass game, obviously. I mean, that's the biggest concern at this point is the pass game, the pass pro, everything involved with the passing game. So, if they're able to find some sort of semblance, and again, I just give me triple digits and I'll be happy. So that's where I'm at with this game. We doing predictions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'm gonna go 34-3 Michigan. I think they figure some things out offensively, and I think the defense shines.
Wow, I like that a lot. I like the 3. I truly believe that other than I'm going to go 7 for Minnesota because I think it's going to be a garbage time touchdown or something because that happens a lot in college football. Yep. But I'm gonna bet whatever it's only Michigan -9, which seems crazy to me.
Started at 12.5 too. A lot of the big money is on Minnesota apparently.
I mean, I get it that people think that we can't score, but like I just feel like we're gonna wear Michigan or Minnesota down like very quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go. I'm not sure that they're gonna figure it out that much. I'm gonna go 28-3, which I still 4 touchdowns. I don't think we're gonna be mad about if they can do that throughout the day, especially if it's early on and we're clicking. Because let's be real, like Michigan's offense was clicking in that first half, right? Now you need to put together 2 good halves. Let's say that too, right? Michigan cannot go out, dominate in the first half, and then just completely let off the gas in the second half because what happened in the Texas game, what happened even in the Arkansas State game, and then you saw it in the USC game is teams started loading the box in the second half, and they've kind of figured it all out. So that's going to be on Jerome Moore, Kirk Campbell, Grant Newsom as well. So, but I think that Michigan comes out and plays pretty dang well against a not so great opponent here. And then you go hopefully to Seattle and see what happens on the road for the first time. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you to Hale IPA in North Peak, Truly Hard Seltzer, Sun Cruiser, Hard Vodka Tea. We will be at Pretzel Bell on Friday night. So come hang out with us. Have a beer. I'm excited for that. And then bright and early on Saturday morning, hey, some people are probably taking this game off. I would say some fans, they say, we've already done the Texas, we've already done USC. We need a breather. No, we're back at it. We're back at it.
Shotskis.
You want to know what Jim Harbaugh says? I don't know if you've ever noticed the TED stickers on the back, the helmet stickers on the back of their helmets.
Yeah.
TED stands for there every day. There every day. They've got something in their locker room that there's just a sticker for every day that you practice. And it's there every day. You need to be there every day. We're going to be there on Saturday.
I will be there. I will not miss it.
Absolutely. All right. For us, you can follow us at Blue by 90 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Blue by 90 Podcast on YouTube and blueby90.com. We appreciate you. Go Blue.
Go Blue.